Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. You are listening to Author's Best Friend podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and I'm here today with my new bestie, Lolly Oaks, all the way from Italy.
Ciao.
Lolly, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking very basic Coke with a few lemon drops.
Do you have any ice in it?
No, I should have, though.
My experience in Italy is that you usually have to ask for ice with your Coke.
Yeah, it's not obvious. Don't take it for granted.
Well, we are in very different time zones. And so it is, although I could use a Coke right about now. It's 9 a.m. here. And so I have got a coffee.
Yeah.
So, Lolly, you are the author of All is Fair in Love and War. Sorry, All is Fair in Love and Theater.
Well, that's where it came from. So that's fine.
All is Fair in Love and Theater.
Yep.
And not A Peony for Your Thoughts, which is where my brain would go next. A Peony for Your Claws is coming out on September 4th.
Yep.
And so I have a lot of questions about these two books in particular, like the plots and where you got them from, because they feel unique to me, the differences there. And so I kind of wanted to go on a little journey of how you even started writing in the first place, and then kind of talk about that trajectory from All is Fair in Love and Theater and then to A Peony for Your Claws. So do you write like full time? I read a little bit about you in the back of your book about you being in theater. So how did you sort of get into writing?
Yeah, so the two things weren't connected at all. So I did theater. I went to acting school for 3 years, 3 very long and also very short years. And, I think that after being out of acting school for about a year, by the time I started writing, I just really missed it. Just being in that environment and being with people that understood what my goals were and what my aspirations were and all that. I don't know. I just got the idea, hey, why not write a book based, I didn't have a hot academic rival that I ended up making up with in rehearsal room, but I did have, I did have a, pretty solid theater background. And so why not apply that to a book?
Did that feel hard to transition? Like Tessa Dorico, she also does theater and talked about how she would, like writing scripts and directing, actually gives you a unique insight into being able to write books from a visual perspective like that. Do you find that experience similar?
I think so. I think that for me, the process of writing books has kind of become like, I imagine a movie in my head rather than a script. So every scene feels very cinematic in a way. Like I have a very clear image of what the scene would look like if it were a movie, or a TV show or whatever. So yeah, that's what it's been like for me mostly.
I very much got that sense with Theodore and Daphne in their rehearsal scenes. It feels very much like you're watching it play out. Like you do a very nice job of adding in all these little details to help visualize that.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Did you perform Romeo and Juliet?
I did not.
Oh, wow.
That was like my main reason for, including Romeo and Juliet in the book, because it was always this thing that I thought to myself, dang, I never got to play Juliet, did I? So it was like, okay, you know what? If I can play it, my character's going to play it,
Do you have any like favorite roles from when you were in theater?
Where I did The Twelfth Night, which is by Shakespeare. And I had a double role that was Duke Orsino and Sir Andrew. So they were actually male roles, but we did a production where women did both men and women roles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was pretty cool. I wore a mustache. Yeah. And I still have a scar, by the way, because of the mustache. Because they use this like awful glue. I have no idea what you call it, but they use this awful glue so they wouldn't come off mid-play, obviously. And yeah, I have a little scar right here because of the glue. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was fun. No, it really was fun. It was great. It was very challenging playing two people, alternating scene, but yeah, it was great.
And it gives you a little bit of insight into like actually playing like a male character.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about it at first. Like when I was writing the book, I hadn't really thought about it. And I was like, wait a second. I know this stuff, when I was writing Theo's POV.
Theo sort of struggles a little bit with, recognizing how good he is and sort of putting on this facade of, I'm the best and, you guys are below me because he's worked so hard to get here.
Exactly.
Did you know anyone like that in your department, or were you the Theo of the group? Like,
no, not really. No, I feel like in my group, at least, everyone had a very clear vision of who they were as performers. At least I didn't feel like they were putting up a facade or anything like that. The part that I would say is more mine is regarding the anxiety. I decided to give it to the male character because I wrote the book over 2 years ago, right? At this point. And I feel like at that time, there were books with characters that suffered with anxiety, but it's usually the female character or more often the female character. So I wanted to give this to Theo because I felt like, it was important to see that men struggle with anxiety as well.
Yeah, I found that he was quite charming. Even he's very sassy. He's English, right? And so his use of the endearment love, like, while maybe it was meant to give him a little bit of like a pretentious touch, like he's kind of like patronizing you a little bit. I found it so endearing. And his most of my highlights are his, like something about like his brain is not a fun place to be sometimes. Or one of my favorites is when Daphne was like planning a date with someone and she signs it like XOXO and he's like, X, like, did they kiss? And he's just like ruminating on this one particular thing, and then he's like says something about like, if I could just stop thinking for 10 seconds, like that would be great. All of his, I was like, that's me.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's very relatable. Like, even if you don't struggle with anxiety, I think like that's like a very relatable thought process, the panicking a little bit, I'm overthinking this.
Yeah. I loved the like his sort of stream of consciousness moments. I found him very endearing.
I'm so happy. I'm very protective of Theo. I feel like he's one of those characters that one may call unlikable for, several reasons, but I'm very protective of him. I think, his character development was very important to me. Because I feel like Daphne, she does learn to, she learns to love again. She learns to give people a chance after getting her heart broken. So I'm not saying she didn't have development, but I feel like Theo was the one that really needed to go through it, So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely felt that while reading the book. Like I thought that his progression was very nice. And I think that Daphne played a really nice role in helping him do that. Oh yeah, his relationship with his grandparents was also so sweet. Yeah, he's very charming. And so I'm assuming that because you are writing another book and putting it out, that you enjoyed that experience of putting a book together and getting it out there. Was there anything about that experience that sort of like surprised you or was harder than you thought it might be, or anything that you didn't really expect in writing a debut novel and getting it out there?
Yeah. So I think that at first, when I just started writing, I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing and I'll see how it goes, no pressure. If I feel like I'm hitting a dead end or if it's not working out, it's fine, But the more I kept writing, the more I thought, okay, this is going somewhere. This is great. And I genuinely had never thought of myself as a writer, I enjoyed writing in school. I enjoyed writing essays. I was probably one of the 2 people in my class that enjoyed writing essays. But creative writing is not really something that I had a chance to explore before. And so I think that, I feel like I'm, like on my core, I'm a very creative person. I need to be, whether it's acting, whether it's, even just digital drawing, which is something I enjoy. Whatever it is, I need a means to express myself. And I was surprised. I was a little surprised that writing, was one of those means because I hadn't really thought about it that much before.
And did you tell anyone? Like, did your family or friends know that you were writing a book?
No, it was a secret. No, it was actually a secret. I'm not sure why. I guess I wanted to get surprised, but for 6 long months, I didn't tell anyone. Until one day, I think I was walking my dogs with my dad. And he was like, I think you're hiding something. I was like, why would you say that? Yeah, I swear. And why would you say that? I don't know. You're always on your computer. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm writing a book, I guess. So yeah, only my dad knew. And then I think I told my family at dinner like a few weeks before the book came out. And they were all a little shook for sure.
Wow. Well, what was your dad's reaction when you told him?
I mean, he was like, he started asking questions, so what's the title? What are the characters' names? What's it about? All the kind of things that dads ask. Yeah, I didn't go into too much detail. Partly because it's a little weird for me to talk about anything potentially romantic with my dad. And then, yeah, I guess, he wasn't, I think that the main difference between him and the rest of my family was that he wasn't surprised. He was just curious about it. And everyone else was like, you did what?
Yeah. Even in my own experience, like working with Sierra, like I know her, I work with her, we're best friends and I know how creative she is and how smart she is. But then you see this product that this person has made that and you're like, you did that. Like, that's crazy. Like, these are words on a page and you wrote these and they just came out of your mind. Like, it is very surprising. Even when you know that somebody's working on it, it's still just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you made this. And so what I'm really curious about is, and I know we had talked a little bit offline about how you had some other like manuscript ideas and then a Peony For Your Claws sort of took precedent. But how did you go from something that resembled, something you were very passionate about, something you had personal experience about? And this is me just assuming that you're not actually a werewolf. But how did you go from writing something?
You are in fact wrong. I'm kidding.
Wouldn't that be a twist for the podcast?
Yeah, I would.
How did you go from writing something that you know so much about and you had intimate experience with since you worked in that field to wanting to write something paranormal?
One thing about me is that I am more of a fantasy girl than I am a romance girl when it comes to books.
Okay.
In the sense that like if you give me 100 books, read 80 of them are probably going to be fantasy and 20 of them are going to be romance. And it's just because I don't like romance or anything, but I don't know. I think that fantasy just generally catches my attention most, right? And so, but I didn't feel like I was at the point where I could write a fantasy myself. I do hope to write a cozy fantasy at some point because that, that's the kind of fantasy where the stakes are lower and you don't have to build this like massive lore behind it. Because I'm just not sure I'm capable of that. But I wanted to write something that had a little bit of magic, you know? And so I thought, well, paranormal, if you put together paranormal and a romantic comedy, because there's a difference between romantic comedy and romance. They feel like if you tell someone, oh, I'm writing a paranormal romance, they're going to be like, they're going to imagine something a little more serious.
Sure, yeah.
If that makes sense. And I thought that combining a romantic comedy and paranormal would, be a way to like dip my toes into something that resembles fantasy, but that is not quite it and is not like the focal point of the entire story.
This might sound sort of like a silly question, but in a romantasy or a rom-com fantasy, it's sort of like the romance is at the center and then there's these fun, like, sort of fantastical elements. And then, in like, well, I guess in like romance fantasy, it's like some sort of large battle or thing that the main person has to overcome. And then they also, have like powers or something like that.
They kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is sort of the main... Like if you were to write like a cozy fantasy, what's sort of like the main focal point there? Is it like character development? Is it still some sort of like thing that's going on in this universe that's the focus? I've never really read one of those, so I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think that cozy fantasy to me just, is, you get that magical, mystical vibe, but it's never that serious, That's just in my head what differentiates like cozy fantasy to say full on romantasy or high fantasy or whatever. I think that the magical element is predominant. So I would definitely, think about something, I don't know, maybe witchy, maybe, along those lines. Although I do have an idea for a witchy romantic comedy. So yeah, but that's mostly when I think about cozy fantasy. I just think the stakes aren't as high.
So yeah, that makes sense. So in this book, you shared some chapters with me, and I just ate those for dinner. They were so good. And I really appreciate this. Like, the book is written in like modern times, but it feels like in Fernport, the town, that there's sort of Delilah and Cedric, and it feels like they're just sort of like transported. Like, it feels very has like a classic feel to it. It has a sense that like you're in the past, and Delilah has a very feminine nature. She likes pink and dresses and flowers, and she's sort of reserved in a way. And Cedric, he wears a suit. He's very polite. He's proper. Opens doors, catches you when you trip and fall. and he's British, which also just gives him that sort of layer of,
I don't know why I keep doing this.
Hey, I'm here for it. Stop. I love it. And I think that it's the perfect like juxtaposition for her to be this very flowery, cutesy girl in this very like traditional type classy romance, but she's a werewolf. Like, it's just the comparison there of this becoming like this beast, I think, is so clever. And so was this sort of like the point, or did you come in knowing that you wanted to write Delilah this way, and then we're like, well, what powers or paranormal element could I give it? Or did you know that you wanted to start with werewolves? Like, how did that come about?
So that was 100% the point. I love when characters have a duality to them. And, everything you said, 100% correct. I wanted Delilah to be happy and, very, very girly, very, very feminine, and to be, just a very kind soul, And I also wanted her to be this like beastly thing that she doesn't have a lot of control over, And I think that, so I knew this coming in, but the idea originally came from Teen Wolf, actually.
Okay.
If you remember, yes. And because in Teen Wolf, there was this character, her name was Malia, and she was my favorite. She was a werewolf. She was completely different from Delilah personality-wise. She wasn't feminine. She was very straightforward. She was probably the grumpy one, if you will, in the couple. But yeah, the idea for the girl werewolf came from there. And then I decided to, give her this completely opposite personality to being a werewolf.
Was there anything that was like, I mean, you it seems like you sort of liked, werewolf shows, and maybe knew a little bit about them, but did you have to do a lot of like weird searching werewolf traits?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I did my research on, traditional, I guess, werewolves lore, but I decided that wasn't going to work for my story.
Okay.
And I don't know if some people are going to come for me and be like, that's not how werewolves work. But I told myself, well, you know what? This is my story. Werewolves don't exist. So I think I'm allowed to, change things up. I did, I ended up on, these very weird subreddits. It can get real weird real fast out there. but yeah, I just took, more the physical descriptions maybe of the transformation, that kind of thing, than, the air quotes rules. I kind of, my werewolves come with their own set of rules.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, this is a rom-com fantasy, but there also feels like a little bit of a mystery element just from my 10 chapters. There's some like, I have a lot of questions floating around. And you sort of allude to, what all of this might look like when she does become a werewolf and stuff, but there's some stuff about the town that kind of leaves you asking questions. There's stuff about her and her transformation, Cedric and his sort of what brings him to Fernport. Yeah, like what his deal is all sort of like mysterious. And that adds like a whole other layer. So do you feel like that sort of like mystery is sort of imperative to your fantasy narrative? Like, it's all just kind of like, I don't want to give you all the answers in the beginning because I want you to also have this sense of like, what is actually going on here? Like, how is this going to play out? Was that like something that you wanted to sort of make as one of your big themes?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, maybe not so much. Say when I wrote the first because A Peony For Your Claws started as a NaNoWriMo project.
What's that?
So I wrote, oh my God, that is National Writing November Writing Month. I'm not saying that in the correct order, but it's basically this thing where, in the month of November, they also do another month, but mostly November, you just get started on a project and you can choose a word count that you want to get to.
Okay.
So it's usually like the standard is 50K that you write in November.
50K in one month?
Yeah. I know people that crunch 10K words a day. So, but that's not me. That is clearly not me.
Wow.
So no, that's insane. I wrote 10K words in November for A Peony For Your Claws. So that's where it started. So at first, I had this like general sense, but when I write, I'm a pantser 100%. So I do not know what is going to happen between the beginning and the end. So I think that at the beginning, I didn't really think much about this mystery element, like you said. But then I really enjoyed, trying to keep the secrets in for as long as possible. And, keep people a little on their toes through the book.
A couple of things. So, yeah, I think it's easy to crank out, 10, not easy, but it can be easier to crank out 10,000 words like a day when you don't have to do a lot of like researching, like I imagine if you write hockey romances and that's what you exclusively write, like you will learn the sport eventually. And then you just spend time brainstorming, giving your character's background, and then you can, write that out. But to change up, and maybe that's how it felt for you in All Is Fair in Love and Theater, is that like that occupation so well, and so that was like a little bit easier to write for you because you actually know what goes into rehearsals and all that stuff. But now you go to sit down to write and you're like, is that real? Can they do that? Like, does that actually work? And then you spend time trying to like research things. But so was this last November?
Yeah, November 2022.
And when you decided that this would be the book that you would do for that challenge, this was the first time you had written anything about this storyline?
Yeah, it was very first time I started. Like, I've been thinking about it, so it was in my head, but yeah, I'd never written down anything.
But this wasn't always the plan for your second book. Did you had plans for maybe another book you were thinking about?
I did. Yeah. I actually, there's this other book that I wrote about 50K words, roughly, maybe a little more. And it still had a paranormal element, but it was very different. It was, I think that I had described it as, Twilight Zone-esque. There was time travel involved. And that was like a romance. That wasn't a romantic comedy. That was a little heavier. Yeah. And I haven't scrapped that. I hope to finish that at some point, but like I said, I got to like this 50K words and I was like, yeah, what now? I got a little bit of a writing block. So I was like, okay, you know what? You're going to sit tight and I'm going to try and see if I can focus on something else. And then Peony For Your Claws just came to me.
So do you work with a team? Like, do you have like an editor or like people that you work with to bounce ideas off of?
Not really. I do have beta readers. It's not like always the same people. I didn't have the same people beta read for my debut and for A Peony For Your Claws. This time around, I had some fellow authors beta read for me that they so kindly offered. And I think I made a lot of difference. It's helped me so much. Yeah, for sure. And then, I do most of the editing by myself. There's like from the first draft to the final draft, there's probably like 10 drafts in between. There's grammar checks, developmental edit and all that, but I do most of it by myself. And then I have a proofreader at the end.
Gotcha. And do you personally, I've said this many times, which is that I think it's so impressive that people can just create scenes and ideas in their head and put them on paper. I do much better with reading somebody else's scene and then, giving feedback. But you said you're a very creative person. Do you find that it's actually harder to do the editing and easier to do the like just getting stuff down on paper? Or do you still have a little like sometimes where you're like, I don't actually know what's going to go here in the middle. I don't know what my chapters are here.
I think as far as enjoying it goes, I definitely enjoy coming up with the plot more. Oh, mostly because, like I said, I don't prepare anything. I don't really have, I know there's people that I admire so much that like have a spreadsheet and goes, okay, so chapter 1, this happens. Chapter 2, this happens. My brain just doesn't work that way. Coming up as I go is definitely the most fun part for me. And editing, I feel like I enjoy it more when I'm like, let's say I have 10 drafts, let's say from 6 to 10, I enjoy it more. I enjoy the refining more. But the first few drafts are rough. Yeah.
And do you feel like, so when you get like beta readers or other authors to read your book, do you feel like there are any sort of differences in your like Italian type writing, but then you also have like this British like English element, and then you're also getting like American readers? Do you feel like there's any like,
yeah,
this is a saying in Italy, or like this got a little lost in translation, or like dealing with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I definitely need to pay a lot of attention. Luckily, I do, I dream in English. I speak English every day. I worked at an English school.
That's crazy. I've never thought about that.
Yeah. And when, because my mom doesn't speak amazing English. So with my siblings, when we don't want her to understand something, we speak English, which is a little cruel, but yeah. So, I feel like I'm doing okay, but I definitely do have to pay extra attention. Like, I'm aware that I need to pay extra attention to all the different, American English, British English. Make sure, wait, you can say this in Italian, but this doesn't make sense in English,
Have you spent any time, like, you said you lived in the US for a little bit. Did you spend any time like in England?
No, I was there for a week in school. We went for a week, our like yearly like school trip. Yeah, I was in London for a week, but other than that, no.
Yeah, I think I had a feeling that you had some like English background just based off of Theo, but I was surprised to find out that you were actually in Italy, because you do such a good job at giving your English characters. I mean, for somebody who hasn't been to England, it felt very, authentic to me.
So Thank you. I appreciate it. I did have also Love Theater read by someone British. Like, I specifically asked someone British to please let me know if there was anything weird, something British people wouldn't say. So yeah, that made me feel a lot better.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, I mean, that's a big feat to not only have in all of these elements of like, at least for this book, with stuff that's like new to you, but to also try to include, different cultural perspectives, different languages, like those sorts of things can really take you out of the story, I imagine, for people who are like, that's not the right lingo, or like, that's not how you would use that.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind me asking, what's the like a book culture is not really the phrase I want to use, but like do they in where you're at in Italy, do you find that like you could go and try to do a reading at a bookstore, or like is like the bookstagram type vibe that you have, does that translate in Italy too? Like, do you also have a lot like a strong like romance reader group?
So it's there because I feel like, in my like let's say target audience, so say like 18 to 35 maybe, I feel like there's a lot of people that, in Italy that read romance and that enjoy romance. And even, Italian like bookstore community is big, it's a thing. The same way that it is in America or anywhere else. But yeah, there's no, there are no indie bookshops around here. It's not, there's a lot of indie bookshops in America. It's just not really a thing in Italy. So I feel like books, indie published authors are just generally not really in much into consideration, unfortunately. I'm not sure if it's because, there's not, indie culture let's say, but yeah, I definitely felt like indie books are not as.
I see. And so did you think about like take that into consideration and think about maybe taking a more like traditional publishing route, or did you know that in starting out you wanted to try doing it on your own?
I thought about it very briefly, and then I thought to myself, you know what, nah. Yeah. At some point I was like, year after I'd published Australian Love and Theater, I sent some curious to agents to see if they would consider representing me, but yeah, those didn't go through. So for the time being, just gonna keep doing my thing, and if it happens, great. Doesn't happen, fine. I'm gonna keep doing my thing and hope for the best.
Yeah. And then you mentioned that you also like to do like digital drawing. Did you do like your own book covers and your character art?
No, I am completely incapable of drawing people. No, absolutely not. I've tried, to be fair, but nope. I was lucky to find amazing artists that so kindly helped me out and wanted to design these covers for me.
And how did you? Yeah, what did you give them for your vision of Delilah and Cedric?
For Delilah and Cedric, I gave them a mood board. So it was very, cottagecore. It was very flowers, pink, open air. That was the vibe. But I made it very clear that the supernatural element, a paranormal element, needed to be included in the cover. I want people to look at the cover and be like, "Oh, that's cute. Oh wait, are those claws?" So I definitely wanted that little paranormal element, but I didn't want it to overshadow the vibe, but I had this amazing artist, shout out to Alex. They did an amazing job. They came up with the pose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't suggest that. They came up with it and it was amazing. And as soon as I was like, yeah. And the funny thing is, there's a scene that you haven't read yet, where it's not spoiler, I can say it, where Cedric brings Delilah flowers. And Alex designed, illustrated the scene where Cedric brings Delilah flowers, but Alex didn't know there was a scene.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is it. It's meant to be.
You get 100%. It. You took the mood board and you got the assignment. That's awesome. One thing I did notice, so you mentioned that one of the like tropes or themes in this book is sweet and spicy. And I actually don't know if I've seen that as on like a descriptor. And I would have classified All Is Fair in Love and Theater as very sweet. And so is there a particular reason you're cranking it up a notch for these characters?
Well, main reason is that they're older. Delilah is 25, almost 26, and Cedric is 29. Whereas Theo and Daphne were 21. And
yeah, Cedric he's an old man at 29.
Yeah, that's a recurring joke. Yeah, you'll see it a couple of times through the book. And I think the just main thing was that I didn't feel like All Is Fair in Love and Theater being spicy would add anything. And also, I didn't feel super comfortable writing anything too out there about these 21-year-olds, especially because I was older at the time, I think, when I wrote it. So yeah, that's the main reason. But also, I think that in Peony For Your Claws, the mature scenes, if you will, are very important to their relationship. They're not just there, they're important to their development as a couple. Yeah,
I'm already thinking about, how her alter ego, if you will, sort of plays into she has a dog. And so I'm very curious about this sweet little corgi and what happens to him.
I love him.
I'm hoping
he'll be fine.
I'm hoping that
nothing happens. Yeah. Nothing happens to the corgi.
I'm guessing maybe Faye's in charge of that.
Who knows?
And also, if there's sort of this emotional piece involved, you have this mystery layer, so it's not really clear what exactly triggers transformation. But yeah, so I could definitely see how you could sort of use that to your advantage in part of the character building. And I do feel like in All Is Fair in Love and Theater is that like the rehearsal scenes add such tension and sort of like unspoken intimacy type things. And it like that felt like enough of the buildup while they were rehearsing. Yeah. So
I just wanted it to be subtle, the fire. I wanted it to be subtle. I didn't want it to be like, oh, here you go. Here's a, here's a spicy scene just for the sake of it. No, I think I like where I've left them with that. Yeah.
Now that you're getting very close to your release, do you know what? Yeah. Do you have other ideas floating around? Do you have, something that you know that you want to put out next?
So I've already said this, so I can say it. So A Peony For Your Claws is the first book in a 2-book series. So the series is called What?
I didn't know that. I'm so bad with social media, and so
it's okay. It's fine.
It's not just you. I check it like once a week. I'm so bad with
so
everything is a surprise to me.
Well, I hope it's a good surprise. So the series is called Creatures of Fernport. For those who don't know, Fernport is the fictional small town where the main characters of A Peony For Your Claws are through a story. And the second book, I have a title, and I obviously know who the next couple is going to be.
Do I know who it is? I have a theory, but have I met them in the first 10 chapters? I think there's mention of someone that I had questions about.
I think, okay, well, technically, I guess you have met them.
They've been mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's so fun.
But I didn't like that. It's not going to be a mystery. Like I wanted it to be not obvious, but you get a sense that something is brewing. Yeah, it's not. I didn't want it to be a surprise. It's like, oh, okay, we're getting ready for something.
That's awesome. And so these characters will sort of return. Like, will we see more of Delilah and Cedric and Faye and
as you know by now, I don't know exactly when or how. I'm still drafting the book, but they will for sure make an appearance because, they have to.
That's awesome. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is.
And so you're still in sort of the drafting phases of those?
Yeah. I have, as usual, I know where the story is starting. I know where it's ending. And I have some things that I want to happen in between, but, I need to put them in order. I need for things to start making sense in my brain, to rearrange themselves in my brain so that they make sense.
Well, November is coming up, so you could reset a goal for yourself. And
oh gosh, I probably should. It did give me like a boost of okay, you're doing this. Let's do it.
Do you feel like you ever have like a hangover period after writing like a fantasy? Yes, you could just hit books in general, but particularly I think after writing like a fiction fantasy like this is like it takes so much creativity and so much thought that afterwards it's like might be kind of hard to switch gears a little.
I think so. I think that it's good that I have another book set in the same sort of world so that I can sort of keep going. Just, but definitely I think, for the book I'm going to write after the second book in this series, I think there's definitely going to be a little bit of like whiplash, like, okay, wait, where am I? What's going on? But we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you ever want to revisit that Twilight Zone, I will be the first arc reader to sign off.
Thank you. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I am determined to, at some point, put it in the spotlight because I think I can do something with it.
Firm believer over here, and the books have their time and their place, and
100%.
Whether that's whatever's going on in the author's life is like this is actually the book that I feels more cathartic to write, or
absolutely
just when the creativity strikes and that's the idea that you want to write.
Yeah,
but you've got a fan out of me. I really enjoy your British gentleman and how like theatrical your stories do feel. It does kind of feel like you're watching like a movie play out.
Thank you so much.
And I will just be sitting on pins and needles waiting to read the rest of this book because you got me hooked in the 10 chapters. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, it's coming really, really soon. So not too long to wait now.
Yeah. Like less than a month from now. And then when people hear this, it'll be like a couple days.
Oh my God. I'm terrified.
Oh, why?
Oh, it's always nerve-wracking, like for better or worse, you're just putting this part of yourself out there and you're hoping, it's not destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's like, you're taking this brave leap of like, you've built, these, fans of your first book, and then you've done something that's a little bit different. And so you're hoping
that's completely different. You don't need to sugarcoat it. It's completely different.
You've written something that's completely different and hoping that like it's still got all of those same, Lolly Oaks elements that they loved in the first one, but something new. And
I think, like I said, it's been more than 2 years since I wrote All's Fair in Love and Theater. So I do feel like I've improved a lot as a writer, but I didn't want this book to feel like it was written by someone else, So I think there's definitely some things that they're not the same from All's Fair in Love and Theater, but where you can go, oh yeah, I recognize that. That's sort of that humor, that sense of humor, I think.
Yeah, I think about this a lot as an author. I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion or not, but sometimes I think you have to break grammatical rules and just literary rules when you have a particular tone for your book. Like sometimes the punctuations don't go where they're supposed to go, and sometimes the structure of your sentences don't go where they're supposed to go because you're trying to reflect a human experience, and humans don't think in perfectly grammatical sentences, and they don't speak.
Yes. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. No, because, obviously you want your manuscript to be as polished as possible. But at the same time, dialogue is super important to me. I don't want anyone to read my books and go, wait, nobody talks like that, So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like people don't think in typos. And so typos are something that people can get hung up on. But, run-on sentences or really clip sentences or stream of consciousness, those sorts of things, like I think all just kind of is, as long as it's, you're consistent, that's just your character. Like you're trying to portray that that's how your character thinks and speaks. And I feel like that, that's something interesting that you point out about how you can evolve and get better as an author, but you still want to stay true to those pieces of you that like makes your writing unique. Because romance has gotten more and more popular, and the genre can be very saturated, and so people have to find ways that they can kind of stick out. Like, oh, this book is unique, and I think sort of maintaining that is key to doing that. And so I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with me, chatting with me.
Thank you for having me.
All the way in Italy. You're so sweet. I was like, typically I do, podcasts in the evenings. And so I was like, we could do, 4 or 5, whatever. And you were like, yeah, sure. It'll only be like, 2 a.m. for me. And I was like, oh, no way. We could do it in the morning.
No, one thing about me, I do not want to inconvenience anyone. I will literally stab myself rather than inconvenience someone. No, we're sure it's fine. I just got a knife in my leg. That's fine. Don't worry.
Like it's just 3 a.m. and I could barely keep my eyes open, but it's fine. That's funny. You have 2 people that would rather die than inconvenience someone. So I'm glad that we could consensus.
Kindred spirits.
Consensus on a reasonable hour. But yeah, you're my first international guest, and this is a lot of fun.
Woo!
And I appreciate you sharing your story with me.
Thank you.
You can find out more about what Lolly's got going on at LV Oaks Author on Instagram. Mark your calendars for September 4th. Peony For Your Claws is coming your way. And if you're just way too excited, you could go out and read All Is Fair in Love and Theater. In the meantime, you could get copies on Lolly's website, and you can also get it on Kindle. And yeah, congratulations on the release. This is very exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Whee!
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.